Welcome to another deep dive. Today we're going to be looking at excerpts from J J Benitez's Caballo de Troya 6, Hermon,
Yeah.
which is the latest installment in the Caballo de Troya series.
It is.
So, for those who aren't familiar with this series, could you give us a brief overview of what it's about?
Sure. So the series follows these two pilots, right?
Right.
Who, through this top secret U.S. Air Force project,
Okay.
get sent back in time to 30 A.D. Palestine
You witness.
to witness the life of Jesus.
Uh-huh.
And
So it's historical fiction, then?
it is historical fiction, but
okay.
with a blend of science and faith, you know?
Okay.
And what's really fascinating about these particular excerpts is that they focus on the period after the events in Jerusalem,
Okay.
a time that is often shrouded in mystery.
Ooh, so we're going beyond the familiar story.
Exactly. We're getting into uncharted territory.
That's exciting.
And I think it's worth mentioning that the author himself, J J Benitez,
Yeah.
admits to a 6-year hesitation before writing this book. He expresses a fear of revealing certain truths that might challenge traditional interpretations.
So he felt a sense of responsibility, almost a burden, to get it right.
You could say that. It's like he's wrestling with the weight of these revelations.
That's heavy stuff.
It is.
Before we dive into those, though, can you remind me about Operation Trojan Horse?
Right. So
The mission.
it's a top secret U.S. Air Force project using advanced technology.
Of course, it's time travel, so.
Exactly. They've got this tech called swivels.
Swivels.
Yeah,
Look.
that enables time displacement.
Right.
So they send these two pilots, the narrator and his brother Eliseo, back to 30 A.D. Palestine.
Okay, so their objective is to observe Jesus' life.
Primarily, yes, but they also conduct scientific investigations using their futuristic gadgets.
Oh, that's an interesting twist. So it's not just observing, but also analyzing.
Exactly. They're trying to understand what happened through a scientific lens as well as a spiritual one.
That's got to create some interesting conflicts.
Oh, absolutely. Imagine trying to blend into ancient society with futuristic knowledge and technology.
Yeah, talk about a culture clash.
You got it.
So we've got time travel, secret missions, and a clash of science and faith. But these excerpts also suggest some pretty big differences between what the time travelers observe and the traditional biblical accounts. Can you give us an example?
Sure.
Yeah.
Well, let's take the Ascension and Pentecost.
Okay.
The time travelers' accounts differ significantly from what's written in the Gospels.
Really? How so?
He even suggests there might be inaccuracies and deliberate omissions in Luke's writings.
Deliberate omissions. That's a bold claim.
It is, and it raises all sorts of questions, doesn't it?
Like who would change the historical record and why?
Exactly. It forces us to think critically about the motives behind the writing of the Gospels.
That's a whole other deep dive right there.
For another time, perhaps.
Speaking of digging deep, the time travelers go on a quest to find the remains of Joseph,
Yes.
Jesus' earthly father,
Mm-hmm.
and Amos, his brother. Now, I doubt they're just using shovels and picks for this. How does advanced technology come into play here?
This is where it gets really cool. They use these tiny devices called Nemo microsensors.
Nemo. Like the fish.
Kind of. Except these are microscopic
Okay.
and capable of detailed DNA analysis.
Oh.
So they examine skeletal remains,
Mhm.
determine blood types.
So it's CSI, ancient Palestine.
Pretty much.
So what did they find? Did the DNA analysis confirm anything interesting?
It did. They discovered that Jesus had AB blood,
Okay.
which perfectly aligns with the genetic inheritance from Joseph, who had type A.
Ah, so they're establishing a biological link through DNA evidence.
Precisely futuristic tech validating ancient lineage.
That's mind-blowing. But with all this advanced technology, there have to be some downsides, right?
There are, and they're pretty significant.
Uh-oh. What kind of downsides?
Well, the swivels, that tech that enables time displacement.
Right.
It comes at a cost. The process causes severe neurological damage.
To the pilots. Oh, no. How severe are we talking?
The onboard AI, nicknamed Santa Claus.
Wait a minute. Their AI is called Santa Claus.
Yeah.
That seems a little out of place, given the situation.
You'd think so, right?
Okay, so Santa Claus, the AI,
Right.
gives them a pretty grim prognosis.
He does.
So what kind of treatment options are there? Can they even get treatment in 30 AD?
That's the problem. The recommended treatments, things like glutamate and N-tert-butyl phenylnatrona,
Wow, I can't even pronounce those.
they're pretty advanced. Definitely not available back then.
So they're stuck.
Pretty much. It creates a constant tension, this race against time.
Right, because their own time is literally running out.
Exactly.
But hold on, those Nemo microsensors.
Yes.
They analyze DNA.
They do?
Could they potentially be used for neurological repair, too?
That's an interesting thought, and it's something the pilots consider.
Oh, really?
Yes, but it's initially dismissed as too risky and untested.
I can understand that.
Right.
But with their condition worsening,
Exactly. Desperate times call for desperate measures.
so they might be forced to try it.
It could be their only hope.
Wow, so we've got time travel, biblical mysteries, advanced science, and now a medical thriller element.
That's Caballo de Troya 6 for you.
I'm hooked already. But before we dive into the next excerpt, I want to know more about the people they encounter in 30 AD. Do they interact with anyone besides Jesus?
Oh, absolutely. Their interactions provide a fascinating glimpse into the social dynamics of the time.
Give me an example.
Well, they meet this shrewd horse trader named Kamar.
Kamar.
He teaches them the art of bartering.
So they're getting a crash course in ancient economics.
You could say that.
That's pretty cool. Anyone else?
There's also this,
What?
well, let's just say a very colorful character
Okay.
who runs the Quasarant Inn.
Sounds intriguing.
Yeah.
Are these encounters purely observational, or do they learn something for these people?
They definitely learn a lot. One encounter in particular highlights the clash between prevailing Jewish beliefs and Jesus' teachings.
Ooh, that sounds interesting. Tell me more.
They meet a deaf-mute boy called Denario.
Denario.
He becomes a central figure in understanding Jesus' approach to healing.
Okay.
Back then, illness was often viewed as divine punishment for sin.
Right, a very different perspective from modern medicine.
Exactly. But Jesus challenges that notion.
How so?
He presents a view of a compassionate God who loves unconditionally.
Regardless of physical condition.
Precisely. When he heals Denario,
Yeah.
it really challenges the time traveler's scientific understanding.
That must be pretty mind-blowing for someone steeped in logic and reason.
Oh, it is. It creates this fascinating tension between logic and faith.
It makes me wonder how someone with a scientific mind would even process that kind of experience.
Right. It really makes you think.
It does. So they've encountered Jesus, they've met some locals, and they're dealing with this neurological ticking time bomb. What's next for our time-traveling adventurers?
Well, the excerpts also describe their journey to Jesus' secluded camp on Mount Hermon.
Mount Hermon. What's special about this camp?
It's called the Mahane.
Tamahane.
It's a place where Jesus spends time in solitude, praying, and communicating with God.
So a place of deep spiritual connection.
Exactly.
I'm sensing a theme here.
You're catching on. And it's at this Mahane that they gain a deeper understanding of Jesus' teachings.
Okay, so they're going beyond the surface level now.
Yes, they're getting into the heart of his message.
This is getting more and more fascinating, but I have a feeling this is just the beginning of their journey.
Oh, you have no idea. Just wait until you hear what happens next.
Okay, now you've really got me on the edge of my seat. Unfortunately, we'll have to pause our deep dive here for now. But don't worry, we'll be back with part 2 to continue exploring the mysteries of Caballo de Troya 6, Hermon. We're back and ready to continue our deep dive into J J Benitez's Caballo de Troya 6, Hermon.
Yes, we left off with our time-traveling pilots arriving at Jesus' secluded mountain camp, the Mahane.
A place of prayer, solitude, and deep spiritual connection.
Right, but it's not all peace and contemplation, you know.
Oh, what else happens there?
Well, they have this rather unexpected encounter with a mother bear and her cub.
Our bear?
Yep. Imagine that. In the midst of all this spiritual reflection, they're suddenly facing a wild animal.
Talk about a reality check.
It's like a reminder that even in the presence of the divine, the natural world can still surprise you.
And maybe even threaten you. But getting back to the spiritual aspect, you mentioned earlier that Jesus revealed himself as the faith, essentially being tested by God like any human.
Exactly. And this leads to another mind-blowing revelation. The promise of immortality.
Immortality. Wow, that's a big one. What does Jesus say about it?
He explains that humans are eternal beings, currently inhabiting physical bodies.
Okay.
But our essence is destined for a different existence after death.
So this earthly life is just a temporary phase.
That's what he suggests. It challenges our whole understanding of life and death.
It definitely does. Does he give any details about what happens after death? Or what this other existence might be like?
He doesn't get into specifics about the afterlife, but he emphasizes the importance of embracing this life.
Okay. With intensity, love, and purpose.
Knowing that it's a precious opportunity to make the most of the present because eternity awaits. That's both comforting and a little daunting.
It is, isn't it? It raises all sorts of questions.
It does. Like, What about those who do terrible things in this lifetime? Does everyone, regardless of their actions, experience this immortality?
That's where things get really interesting. Jesus suggests that eventually everyone will be touched by God's love.
So, a universal redemption, even for those who stray from the path.
That's what he seems to be implying. It's a challenging concept, especially when we consider the horrors humans are capable of.
It makes you wonder about justice, forgiveness, and the very nature of good and evil.
It does. And the book doesn't offer any easy answers.
So it's up to us to grapple with these questions.
It seems so. It's an invitation to explore the complexities of faith and morality.
No easy answers, just more questions to ponder. But that's often how it is with these big existential topics. Do they stay at the Mahana indefinitely, or does the story move on from there? They do stay for a while longer, and Jesus continues to share his teachings.
Like what?
Remember the 3 types of light he introduced earlier?
Right. Physical light, the light of the mind, and the light of the spirit.
He encourages them to cultivate all 3 types of light within themselves.
Okay, but how do you cultivate something like the light of the spirit? It sounds pretty abstract.
He talks about practices like prayer, meditation, acts of kindness, and simply being present in the moment.
So quieting the mind, connecting with your inner self.
Exactly.
Recognizing that divine spark within.
It's a journey inward, a process of self-discovery and spiritual awakening.
But I can imagine that's a real struggle for someone with a scientific mind.
It is. He struggles at first, but as he witnesses the impact of these practices on Jesus and others, he starts to see beyond his skepticism.
So he's learning to experience the world in a new way, beyond logic and reason.
You got it.
Does this shift in perspective affect how he deals with his neurological condition?
It's not explicitly stated, but it's implied that his growing spiritual understanding influences his overall approach to life.
Including his illness.
It seems so. It's not about finding a physical cure, but about finding meaning and purpose even in the face of suffering.
That's a powerful message. And it resonates with a lot of people who are facing their own challenges.
It does. It reminds us that healing can take many forms.
And sometimes the most profound healing happens on a deeper spiritual level.
Exactly.
But their time at the Mahana can't last forever.
Right.
What happens next in the story?
Well, eventually they leave the secluded mountain and journey with Jesus towards Jerusalem.
Jerusalem. Knowing what awaits him there, this journey feels ominous.
It does. It's like a countdown to a tragedy we can't prevent.
What kind of challenges do they face on this journey?
They encounter a group of bandits who demand all their possessions.
Oh no. Are they in danger?
It's a tense situation, but Jesus intervenes.
Ow.
He calmly diffuses the situation without resorting to violence.
It's a powerful example of nonviolent resistance.
It is.
Something that's still relevant today.
Absolutely. But this encounter is just a taste of what's to come as they get closer to Jerusalem.
So the tension is building.
It is.
What other encounters do they have along the way?
They come across a group of lepers.
Lepers.
People who were outcasts from society, shunned and feared because of their illness.
I can't imagine how isolating and dehumanizing that must have been.
It was, and it highlights the stigma surrounding diseases in ancient times.
So how does Jesus react to this encounter?
His response is both compassionate and revolutionary. He embraces the lepers, touches them, and heals them.
Wow. He's defying social norms and showing that love has no boundaries.
Exactly.
It's a powerful message about inclusivity and the inherent dignity of every human being.
It is, and it has a profound impact on the time traveler.
How so?
He witnesses firsthand the power of Jesus' compassion and love.
And it starts to chip away at his skepticism.
Exactly. He's not just observing anymore. He's becoming emotionally invested, even transformed by what he's witnessing.
So he's starting to understand Jesus' message on a deeper level.
It seems so. But as their journey continues, the tension keeps escalating.
Because they're getting closer to Jerusalem.
Right. They witness the growing hostility towards Jesus, the whispers of conspiracy.
And the machinations of those who want to silence him.
Exactly. The sense of foreboding is palpable.
It's like the calm before the storm.
It is. Knowing what's coming, it's hard not to feel a sense of dread.
Even though we know how the story ends, the journey is still captivating.
That's the power of this narrative, even in a fictionalized account.
It taps into our collective memory and the enduring power of this story.
Right. And it makes us question everything we thought we knew.
We're back for the final part of our deep dive into Caballo de Troya 6, Hermon.
The tension was definitely building at the end of part 2.
It was. We left our time travelers on the road to Jerusalem, knowing that things were about to get a whole lot worse for Jesus.
Right, and their own neurological conditions are deteriorating.
Exactly. It's like they're racing against time on multiple levels.
They are. Their symptoms are getting more severe, with headaches, memory lapses.
Hallucinations, even.
It's a constant reminder of their own fragility.
It makes you wonder how they can even function.
You'd think they'd want to give up, but they don't.
That's true. But didn't they talk about using those Nemo microsensors for neurological repair back in part 1?
They did. And as their conditions worsen, they realize they have to try.
Wow, so they're really going to attempt experimental surgery on themselves back in 30 AD.
Desperate times, right?
That's one way to put it. Does it work?
It seems to. It gives them a chance to continue their mission, at least.
That's a relief. But with everything they're going through, did they ever think about just going back to their own time?
The idea does come up, especially for the narrator.
Yeah, I can see why.
But their fascination with Jesus keeps them there.
And their commitment to the mission, I imagine.
Absolutely. They want to see it through.
It's like they're driven by something bigger than themselves.
You could say that. It's more than just a mission at this point.
Right, it's a personal journey for them too.
Exactly.
Okay, but let's talk about what happens when Jesus enters Jerusalem.
It's a pivotal moment full of anticipation and anxiety.
The excerpts describe it as a scene of celebration and unease.
Right. Some people welcome him as a Messiah.
Others see him as a threat.
Exactly. It's a real clash of ideologies.
Knowing what's going to happen, it's hard not to feel a sense of dread.
It is, like a storm about to break.
So how do these excerpts handle the events leading up to the crucifixion?
Well, one interesting thing is they challenge the traditional view of Judas.
Oh, how so?
They suggest that maybe he wasn't just motivated by greed.
Really? That's not how I usually hear this story.
Right. But the excerpts propose that maybe Judas believed he was acting out of loyalty to Jesus.
Loyalty? How could betraying him be an act of loyalty?
Well, maybe Judas thought that by forcing Jesus' hand, he would hasten the arrival of his kingdom.
So a misguided sense of loyalty, then?
Maybe. It's definitely a different way of looking at it.
It is. It makes you wonder about all the different perspectives that are often lost to history.
Right. We only get one side of the story most of the time.
Exactly. So how do the excerpts depict Jesus himself in these final days?
He's surprisingly calm, accepting of his fate.
Even though he knows what's coming?
It seems like he understands that sacrifice is part of his path.
That's powerful. But does he ever show any fear or doubt?
There is that moment on the cross when he cries out, my God, why have you forsaken me?"
Right, that's a very human moment of anguish.
It is, even in his divinity.
So how do the excerpts describe the resurrection and the ascension?
They present them in a way that acknowledges the mystery,
While still trying to be grounded in reality.
Exactly. They don't shy away from the miraculous.
Right. But they present it in a way that invites you to think about it, to ponder the possibilities.
Exactly. It's a balance between faith and critical thinking.
I like that. It doesn't force you to choose one or the other.
Right. It recognizes that we don't have all the answers.
And that sometimes you just have to take a leap of faith.
Exactly.
So what about the time travelers? Are they still around at this point?
They are, but they're more in the background now.
Makes sense, considering everything they've been through.
Right. But before they return to their own time, they have one final encounter with Jesus.
Really? What happens?
He appears to them one last time, offering words of encouragement.
What kind of encouragement?
He reminds them of the significance of their mission, even if they don't fully understand it yet.
It's like a final blessing from him.
It is. And then they depart, returning to their own time.
So do they ever find out why they were chosen for this mission?
That's left open to interpretation, really.
Ah, so the mystery continues.
It does. And it leaves us with a lot to think about.
It certainly does. We've covered so much ground in this deep dive. Time travel, biblical mysteries, scientific wonders, spiritual revelations.
And personal struggles, too.
It's been quite a journey for our time travelers and for us as well.
If you're left with more questions than answers, that's a good thing.
It means we're still curious, still searching.
Exactly. Kabaya de Troya 6. Hermon isn't about giving you all the answers.
Right, it's about sparking your curiosity.
And challenging your assumptions.
And making you think about the big questions.
Exactly. So if you're intrigued by what we've talked about today, I definitely recommend checking out the book for yourself.
And keep in mind, the search for truth and meaning is a lifelong journey.
Keep exploring, keep asking questions, and keep diving deep.
Until next time.